Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is The Amateur, where we're here to talk life, hobbies, politics, ideologies, what have you. And on today's episode, we'll be doing a recap of the significant political and social events of January 2026. But before I get into that, I do want to just say Happy New Year. I know it's been a minute since I posted. It is one of my New Year's goals to try to post at least one video per month. And as you can see, we are coming up to the end of January. There's a lot that I wanted to say, so I really do think that this recap can help frame some of the thoughts, and maybe I'll go into more depth on future videos later on. And then I also just want to note my beautiful lighting system, courtesy of my boyfriend. Thank you. So I just wanted to give him his props for that. It was a birthday gift, so I really appreciate that. But yeah, so it looks like with the month of January, there seems to be something new every single week. And I've had a lot to say on them. Like I said, school has been schooling, life has been lifing, but we'll go ahead and get right into it.
Where the money's going? What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building.
Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota, as literally billions of dollars have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP of Somalia.
So I want to say that the very biggest issue that I think has been the massive fraud that has been going on throughout the country. This has been a big thank you to Nick Shirley and those that he's worked with to really expose the fraud in Minnesota. And since he's came forward, you have other individuals like Cam Higbee, other YouTubers, other small journalists that have been going around and really just trying to expose the different forms of fraud. And different states have been popping up. And so I want to say, including Minnesota, there's been Maine, Ohio, and California as like major hotspots of fraud in the country. And this fraud has been billions of dollars of worth of taxpayer money. So the biggest thing with these fraud rings and these scandals is that they have been tied to a lot of immigration populations. Most notoriously, it's been the Somali population. And it's really sad to see that a lot of these scams follow a similar pattern where, again, you have the taxpayer dollars and the taxpayer money that's supposed to be going to these citizens in need, and yet it's funding the pockets of these immigrants, whether they are illegal or not, where it helps them buy these luxury houses, these luxury homes, and they're not providing the services or the products that they're supposed to be providing based on the tax money that they're being given. For Minnesota, the biggest case thus far has been the Feeding Our Future funds, and these things have been going on well before January. It's just that January has been a lot of it has been exposed. Amy Brock has been charged as the ringleader for the Feeding Our Future fund in Minnesota. She has been behind bars, or she is behind bars currently, and she is also tweeting. So she's making noise about she's not going to go down without a fight, or she's not going to go down alone. And so starting to kind of accuse other leaders of the state who likely knew about the fraud that was going on, but was either poor negligence or they were a part of the fraud ring, getting some money in return. This, of course, included leaders like Jacob Frey, who's the mayor of Minneapolis.
Afarshan. Maaga Yegawa Yarub Farid. Doka Magalada. Minneapolis.
Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota.
Oh, wait a minute.
There, that's better.
But that being said, the exposure of this fraud ring by Nick Shirley is said to have contributed to the collapse of Tim Walz's campaign for an historic third-term gubernatorial race to be the governor again for a third term. So he's no longer running. He's pulled out. I think all that is happening, and I do think that there still need to be serious consequences. Like, people need to be jailed and punished, and some of that money needs to be recaptured as best as possible. But again, like, I know with these things, it generally takes time. Nothing ever happens as quickly as we want it to be, especially when it comes to judicial litigation. The next big thing is is connected to the fraud in Minnesota, which has been just more scrutiny coming on to Ilhan Omar, who is the congressional representative of Minnesota's 5th district. So this is the district that includes Minneapolis. Surprise, surprise. Again, Minneapolis being a big source of fraud or a location where there's a lot of fraud happening within the state of Minnesota. And it's been to the point where Ilhan Omar was pictured with people who had been known, who are known convicts of the fraud scams and the fraud scandals. So her name has been more significantly tied and intertwined with known fraud offenders. So the biggest scrutiny of Ilhan Omar at this time has been scrutiny of her citizen status and whether that was appropriately obtained, as well as scrutiny under her wealth, which has seen like a 3,500% increase in previous years, going from allegedly being in the negative from student loan debt to her and her husband now having like a combined wealth of like $44 million or something along those lines. So like a really significant increase in wealth and funds. This coming from the, again, socialist communist advocate. So just in regards to her citizenship status, there was, at least to my knowledge, there are 2 points of contention. One is that she'd illegally married her brother as a means to gain her citizenship status, and she is a woman who has been married 3 times, and I don't know, I think she's Muslim, but I don't know what the rules and regulations are for like divorce and marriage in that way. But regardless, there are accusations that she'd allegedly married her brother the first time around, which helped solidify her citizenship status, which is a fraudulent representation that is punishable. She could face denaturalization. And the other was that it was actually dealing with her father and her birth date. So Somalia as a country is not it's a third world country. It's not a country that has systems in place to appropriately track its citizens. I don't even think they have an official government or a government that's elected by its people or things of that nature. That being said, it's very difficult to vet people from that country because they're not maintaining records of individuals who commit crime, things of that nature. That being said, is when it came to Ilhan Omar's birth certificate, there was some sort of debate within the news about whether she'd appropriately represented her age and whether she actually has a birth certificate that can track that, because again, Somalia hasn't been a country that's maintained its records that way. But there was something about her being able to gain her citizenship through her father's application if she was under the age of 18. So it's something like where her father had allegedly applied for citizenship status and was naturalized, and because of her age, being a minor, that she also gains the citizenship status through her father. But there has been contentions because there's no known name of her father within the immigration system or then like the citizen system registry or data set or something like that, as long with if she had forged her birth date to be so that she appeared younger than what she actually is, then she was actually an adult at the time that her father had gained citizenship, and that naturalization wouldn't have applied to her. She would have had to go through the process herself.
all of this out there on social media, and again, you have been for years. I know one of your posts recently was even shared by President Trump's Truth Social account. It's not just your opinion, though. You've documented all of this, and you can see for yourself. The screenshots were, as you say, Omar changed her birth year from 1981 to 1982. Despite the documentation, many still have doubts, especially those who pointed out that USCIS doesn't release full records publicly and name verifications may affect searches. But what do you say to those who doubt this story?
I believe that the whole narrative that Ilhan Omar became a citizen at the age of 17, that narrative that's documented, has been sold for so long that people have bought into it and they believe it. But where's the documentation? No one has seen her official naturalization records. No one. Not the Minnesota Secretary of State, not the Federal Election Commission, not Congress. And there is enough evidence now, especially in changing her birth year. I mean, who does that? Who goes to that effort of, oh, I'm in Congress now and I've just noticed that my birth year is incorrect. No, that's a red flag.
Again, just a whole lot of contention around her citizenship status. And I think there's a whole route of citizenship status and those in public office being like a whole debate, but we're not going to talk about it this time. The other point is with her wealth. Yeah, in her wealth and like how that came about. So there's two sources of wealth that's been reported, that's been publicly reported. So it seems I have not personally checked those, so I can't really speak to that. But one was a winery. So allegedly she and her husband hold a winery in California that's supposed to have been making a whole bunch of funds. However, there's no known selling of any wine products from this company. There's a website that doesn't work. And then there's no known, apparently to sell or to make wine, you're supposed to have a license that's registered federally. And there's no known document of that particular company holding that license. And so there's a lot of, paperwork and things that just don't look right in that business. And then her husband also owns a venture capitalist business that's essentially a business that helps invest in startup companies. And as part of those companies' success, as they're starting to earn income, they pay a fund or pay a fee back to that venture capital because they help support that business starting up. However, there's debate on that because as a venture capital company, that company wasn't well known amongst those of Wall Street. Time to wake up. But that company wasn't really recognized in Wall Street. And then just when you factor that in with all of the other companies and businesses and organizations of fraud that have been identified in Minneapolis, like, again, things just don't look right. Things aren't adding up. And then continuing with the fraud for Ilhan Omar, she was recently attacked. And of course, I don't at all condone any sort of political violence. I think whether this was a staged event or not, throw the book at the guy who attacked her and make it his worthwhile, or make it seem that it's not his worthwhile for participating or to be like a lackey of, political dispute or political unrest. But like, it's a win for the Trump administration if they pursue punishment for him to the max, both ways. Like either it's showing like, hey, we actually do care and we're doing our best to try to protect, and then it's also showing like, yeah, if it's going to be staged, if you're going to be paying party members to kind of fake this thing, like, is this really the route that you want to go down? But all that being said, there are accusations of her response being staged during this attack.
We must abolish ICE for good. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem must resign or face impeachment. I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
guy, he sprayed something on her.
I need a napkin to know nothing.
Mostly just because her response leaves many confused on why she responded the way she did. Her responses, in my opinion, and again, I'm coming from a training background in clinical psychology, just so her behaviors aren't typical of what you might expect for someone in a similar situation that she faced. Not saying that it's like completely out of the realm of possibility, but it's not very probable for it to not be intentional, if that makes any sense, for my personal opinion. Especially when this whole attack can be viewed as being a distraction. Again, like I just have been mentioning, she has been under fraud. And the Somali community has not been the best at their cover-ups.
NASRULAHMOHAMED. I'm the manager at Nokomis Daycare Center, and today I want to talk about what happened yesterday. Yesterday morning, I was called by the owner because unfortunately someone came in to our daycare. The cleaner called the owner and told him what happened and the vandalism that happened. The owner called us. Me and another manager came into the scene around 6 a.m. We looked and saw what happened, and we saw that the suspect came in from the back, broke in from the back kitchen, and he also destroyed the wall to come in. As he came in, he broke a door from the wall from Family Dollar from the side. He couldn't, unfortunately, we don't know if that he went in or not, but we saw that it was damaged. As we walked around the daycare, we saw that our office doors was broken into as well. We saw that, unfortunately, there was important documentation, enrollment of the children, and also employee documentation that was gone.
If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
Which was a lot of the journalism that's been going on the last couple of days has been really dishonest. I don't want to point fingers at anybody, but I do feel like what was done was someone came to our building outside of operating hours. When there's a specific sign on our door that says our days and our hours, he came outside of those hours and then claimed, hey, they're closed and they're still making money. They're using taxpayer money to work. And it's like, you don't come outside of operational hours and then say they're using taxpayer money. That was completely false. As you can see, we're open Mondays through Thursdays, 2 to 10 p.m. He was here earlier. I don't see him right now. So it's like, are you trying to record that we're doing fraud, or are you trying to put the Somali name and the fraud in the same sentence? That's what really hurt us the last couple of days. We're open. We've been open. We haven't closed. We've been open for eight and a half years now.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. My name is Tiki Brown. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. As we gain more information from the folks that are out visiting today and gathering additional information, that may change, but currently there is no pause on any of those individual centers. Several of these centers have been evaluated for program integrity in past several years. Some of them have been operated for a number of years. One of the centers, Quality Learning Center, closed just over a week ago. I think another one that was mentioned had closed maybe even several years ago.
We haven't closed once during that period. So I wanted to touch on that first. The second thing is, which is kind of laughable, is the sign. We messed up the sign. We paid somebody to do our sign. He incorrectly did it. We're having him work on it. We paid him to correct the sign. He said it'll be done by this week. So by the end of this week, our sign will be fine. The third thing, which is the fraud claim. There's no fraud going on whatsoever. Kids come to us, clients come to us, their parents come to us. They're here daily. They leave on time. They come on time. There's no fraud going on whatsoever.
And so there's been a video of all of those Somali immigrants coming out of the woodworks to defend their fraudulent child care centers, and all of that being in like gross contradiction with what's been publicly announced, along with that recent attack from the Somali girl about bananas and rice, and bananas and rice, and when you get it, you get it.
So I'm Somali. I'm proud to be Somali. To me, being Somali isn't just eating bananas with rice. It's a lot. It's like it's an interesting thing. It's very hard to describe what it means to be Somali and what it means to be American, but it's like a cultural fusion. It's kind of like the bananas and rice. People don't really see like, it's people don't think, oh, you can eat bananas with rice, but that's what it's like to be Somali and American. It's like that combination of banana and rice, but you're gonna get what I mean.
And her also having been quote unquote attacked by ICE after, spitting on an ICE agent, which is assault. But we're not going to talk about that. All that being said is that there's been a trend of those within the Somali community coming out in trying to do this sort of defense of the accusations and it not coming off in a way that seems authentic or genuine. And this is another one where, again, this kind of attack distracts from the fraud that has been accusatory of her and her wealth. As well as it being just a point of like performative persecution, where she can now say, this is Trump's rhetoric that's leading people to be attacking me. My death threats have been going up. Look. I'm undeserving of this sort of attention. I've done nothing wrong. It's all of his words, all of those things. So that paints the picture. But then just in like a quick analysis of her response in that event, it's just like looking at, one, the fact that the attacker squirted something out of a syringe that is said to be something like apple cider vinegar. There has been, I don't know if there's been an official investigation whereby her shirt / the syringe have been formally tested and evaluated to confirm what the substance was. But one, even with the attacker squirting something out of a syringe, like he squirted it at her chest, on her clothes, which I guess would be like an annoyance at the most, but like he didn't aim for the face, it would seem, which would theoretically do more damage, be more hurtful, be more of a threat if he actually wanted to have a real threat. There's speculation about the attacker in and of itself. There's claims that he was quote unquote MAGA, but his online presence would seem to show otherwise, just in terms of like allegedly having kids who are on the trans side, use pronouns, all of those things that are more typical of someone who supports and believes liberal and leftist mindsets. But aside from the attacker, like also not being like the greatest attacker, it's also just the fact that, she's 5'6", maybe 120 pounds wet. And instead of like pausing to assess what's on me, am I hurt? Is this corrosive? Is this acidic? Am I okay? She immediately starts to run towards this man who is kind of a big dude raising her fist. Like, I don't know what she thinks she's supposed to accomplish. Mind you, the guy's already being tackled by security when she runs up with her raised fist. But it's just like, is this really like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And I think the image as well that she wanted from this event, or that the result of it that I think she appreciates, I don't know how to say that in a way that's like not so accusatory, but essentially it's just understanding that after this gives her fight chance, her opportunity to show toughness and strength. Like, even though I was attacked and I was squirted with this foreign substance, I'm still continuing on. I'm still fighting. I'm going to continue my speech to the end. They're not going to win. I'm not going to let them win. That kind of rhetoric. So all that being said is that with all of this exposure of the fraud has come the deployment of ICE agents, particularly to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so ICE has been conducting raids all over the country, and they've been doing it for quite a while, but most recently, as I've just said, Minnesota and Minneapolis in particular have been the target of their operations. And most notably, there was the killing of Renee Nicole Good on January 7th, and then the killing or the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy on January 24th. Throughout this chaos as well, there have also been accusations of ICE detaining a 5-year-old boy or using a 5-year-old as bait to catch illegal immigrants. And that all has been, that's also like a whole point of contention that I won't get too much into. I think with these most recent deaths from these 2 American citizens, and, you know, some might call them the Darwin Award, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, is that these deaths are still sad, they're still tragic, they're unfortunate, and they were all entirely preventable. And I think a lot of it comes from multiple different areas and different places, but I think first and foremost is talking about the government side of this conflict, of these disputes of between ICE and the citizens and the government. And I think first is just noting the rhetoric that comes from the leadership, particularly the Minnesotan leadership. So this is Jacob Fry, the mayor.
They are not here to cause safety in this city. What they are doing is not to provide safety in America. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better. But I do have a message for our community, for our city. And I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
Governor Tim Walz, the governor.
To the level of chaos and disruption and trauma the federal government is raining down upon our communities. 2,000 to 3,000 armed agents of the federal government have been deployed to Minnesota. Armed, masked, undertrained ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government. Last week, that campaign claimed the life of Renee Nicole Good. We've all watched the video. We've all seen what happened.
And then even the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan.
If you are sick and tired of your government being ransacked by Donald Trump and his minions, literally taking away healthcare from your neighbors, stealing food off of the table from seniors and children, and generally being uncool with the fact that our neighbors are being disappeared, P.S. without due process, it is just called kidnapping, then show up and use your voice, put your body on the line, and use non-violent direct action, which is one of the most important tools in our toolbox to say, I am not okay. I will not go silently into the night.
I just left the site where Alex Preddy was killed this morning by ICE agents, and I am holding on to the hope that I experienced yesterday by walking with 50,000 people through frigid cold temperatures saying ICE out of Minnesota, and was inspired by the rallies that were held all across this country demanding that ICE leave Minnesota and all of our communities. They are doing nothing but wreaking terror and chaos and havoc.
Who are continuing to incite violence against a government agency who is just simply doing their job. And it's something where it's like if you suspend truth and you suspend reality and you suspend any sort of actual distinction or distinguishment between an immigrant who entered the country improperly, illegally, without not the right way, versus an immigrant who came through the country the right way, then yeah, it can kind of make sense when you use language that likens Trump to Hitler.
Actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book.
From John Kelly's words, that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist.
Where one side stands for freedom while the other meets the textbook definition of fascism, namely a far-right dictatorial regime like Hitler's Germany or Franco's Spain or Mussolini's Italy, but also white-ruled South Africa.
And to be praising Adolf Hitler
It's dangerous and it's also disgusting.
So just to be clear, when you said we do agree, President Biden believes that Donald Trump is a fascist.
I mean, yes.
He is paving the way to become a Vladimir Putin or to become an Adolf Hitler or a Kim Jong-un. That's what he wants to be.
What I know is in the early days of the Nazi regime, they started slowly but surely taking away people's rights. And what we're seeing now is the very same thing. We're talking about the death of a constitutional republic. That's what happened in Germany in 1933, 1934. And we're seeing today that you've got an administration in Washington that's ignoring court orders. This is literally the end of the republic as we know it.
And ICE to the Gestapo.
Not Germany. That's the SS and the Gestapo. This is the United States of America. Unmask yourselves.
And you compare them to those nondescript thugs who grabbed that student, that graduate student. It does look like a Gestapo operation.
This is Gestapo-like behavior.
I've not used inflammatory terms of what happened.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
And detention facilities to concentration camps.
We can't do business as usual right now anyway, because our city has been invaded by masked gunmen kidnapping family members and friends and neighbors of ours to send them to concentration camps. Additionally, there's a lot of businesses in our area that have staff or customers or owners who are afraid to come to work, afraid to come in and shop. People are closing down today, and we felt like it wouldn't be kind or fair for us to stay open. So we're closing in solidarity to help send a message.
Just one note. I'm not here to defend ICE, but I'm not a big fan of people using the term concentration camp to describe detention camps. That has a very specific meaning in terms of...
They take people to Fort, I understand that, but they take people to Fort Snelling here, which literally was built as a concentration camp, and Alligator Alcatraz, which I think we can all agree is a concentration camp. I'm not saying they're Dachau. I'm not saying they're putting people in ovens yet, but these are concentration camps.
Okay.
I don't need to argue with you about
that. That's fine.
If you just stop believing the things that are true as being true, then it can make sense why people can be so riled up and so emotional and so passionate about being against ICE. But it's not going on. It's not what's happening. It's just a false comparison that, as we can see, has very dangerous effects. Trump is a duly elected president. He ran his campaign on immigration policy. He won his campaign in the electoral vote and the presidential vote. He is executing the orders that the people elected him for. He's executing laws that have been on the books since 1929, like entering the country illegally or improperly is not a new law that didn't just come with his administration. This is something that has been a law to be enforced for quite some time, almost 100 years. ICE as a law enforcement agency has been a law enforcement agency since the early thousands. So it's been over 20 years since they've been established or created as an organization. These aren't new individuals or new people doing something different. Trump is not acting as a dictator or a king. ICE's job is to enforce the law. And I think what's also extremely cruel is the use of the word concentration camps, because the actual meaning of concentration camps was forced labor, forced to the point of death, starvation, extremely poor conditions, illegal and inhumane scientific research on these individuals, and of course the mass killing. The detention facilities are transit points. They're points points that stabilize these individuals to get them to where they need to be next, but it's not being in the United States. They're getting them to their country of origin. All that being said, it's just a really awful and blatantly false comparison to make by these people, and for also to not be corrected by the media. That doesn't make sense. Secondly, on the government side, for how to further prevent incidents like Renee Good and Alex Pretty's shootings to be happening, well, part of the reason why these shootings are happening is because they're refusing to allow the local police to enforce the laws. And it's to enforce the laws and support ICE operations that are happening. Fun fact, ICE actually cannot arrest U.S. citizens for breaking U.S. laws. ICE's job is to enforce immigration. I mean, that's literally what their name is for. They enforce immigration laws, so they don't have the authority to arrest citizens over civil or criminal offenses in our typical laws. What they do have the authority to do is detain U.S. citizens, especially for questioning, or if they are interfering or obstructing their official duties. They can arrest U.S. citizens if the U.S. citizen is intentionally obstructing, interfering, and preventing the ICE agents from performing their official duties. And then again, they have the authority and the jurisdiction to arrest immigrants who are illegally in this country. That is what their job is for. So again, if a citizen is vandalizing government property, if they're they're being disorderly in a way that's not necessarily interfering with their job or with their official operation, ICE can't arrest them. So this also kind of explains why ICE agents had let Alex Pretty go, I think the week before. I know the media tries portraying him as this perfect, he was just a lawful observer, but the week before, Alex Pretty was getting involved with ICE agents to the point where he damaged a government property, damaged the vehicle. The ICE agents got out, they roughed him up a bit, probably shouldn't have done that, but they couldn't arrest him for that because that wasn't necessarily interfering with any of their official duties, to my knowledge. Again, more stuff might be coming out there. But all that being said is that all the destruction and the riots against ICE and ICE agents that's happening in Minneapolis, outside of an active operation. So this is folks going to hotels or going to dinners or diners or going to restaurants or whatever, because they just think an ICE agent is there, or they just think that that's an ICE agent car. If it's outside of an active operation, it requires the support of local police officers to actually enforce the laws and the laws that are on the books. And for the longest time, the Minnesota and Minneapolis police weren't cooperating, or they weren't, I guess their hands were tied, or Waltz or Fry or whomever was just not letting them do their job. So kind of in line with that, the third thing on the government side is just when they have active sanctuary policies, that ties the hands of ICE agents because they're not able to go into these safe detention centers. They can't go into the jails to collect who they're looking for, which brings their operations into the streets because the judges have been playing a catch and release game with illegal immigrants who they caught for breaking or violating the law, because the police, they don't know that they're arresting an illegal immigrant. When they arrest someone for breaking the law, they're enforcing the law. But then once they find out that they're an illegal immigrant, they're not communicating, they're not participating with the law enforcement. So that's something that Tom Homan has been really adamant about addressing. He's hey, this can all change if you just let us into the jail systems, so that when you catch someone that broke a law that was of an offense that it was great enough that you arrested the person, that we can come in and get this person and start going through those immigration processes.
Minneapolis, they're a sanctuary city. If they'd let us in their damn jail and stop being a sanctuary city, we could arrest the bad guy in the safety and security of the jail. But because they normally release them, now we got to go in the community and find them. Then they're mad we're in the community. President Trump made us promise the American people we're going to find these criminals and make America safe again. So if they don't let us in the jail, we're going to go in the community. And the difference is, in places that's not a sanctuary, one agent can walk into a jail and arrest one criminal illegal alien. But when you release them in the community, now we got to assign the whole team because we got to arrest somebody on their turf. They have access, who knows what weapons. It makes it dangerous for the officer, makes it dangerous for the alien, certainly makes it dangerous for the community. So if Minneapolis wants to help, like I saw Mayor Frey doing an interview this morning, let us in your damn jail. What's the downside of letting a federal law enforcement officer with immigration authority talk to an illegal alien that you already locked up and put in a jail cell? It's ridiculous that they're pushing back.
And I mean, in this process too, ICE has had their blunders. They're not perfect by any means. There was one story where there was an individual who was a suspect of like one of the US's biggest jewelry heists in the country. This was based out of California, and ICE deported that immigrant rather than allowing that immigrant to be criminally prosecuted. And so he's not facing any other criminal charges or criminal punishment for his involvement in that crime. So it's not a perfect system, and there's definitely room for improvement, but I think going into the jail cells helps prevent some of that, because we don't see this in Texas, we don't see this in Florida and these red states where they've arrested more immigrants in Texas and in Florida than in Minnesota. But again, all the media attention has been focused on Minnesota. And I think it's just coincidental that after Minnesota and after Minneapolis has been found with running this almost nearly $10 billion fraud scheme, that they're like, right. And I think it's like a distraction for the citizens, because you would think the citizens would turn their ire onto their public and government leadership about, hey, where's my tax money? $9 to $10 billion is a lot of money for one state. Where's my tax money? And they're not asking those questions to their government leadership. They're actually more upset with them when they cooperate with ICE, and then they're demanding that ICE leave instead of demanding their money return. Like, make that make sense. But as far as the things that the government can be doing better, there's also a lot of things that the individual citizens should and could be doing better to prevent the escalation of what's been going on in Minneapolis. And I think first and foremost, there's just a big misunderstanding of what's actually meant by the First Amendment. Because you don't actually inherently have a right to protest. You have a right to freedom of speech. You have a right to assemble peacefully. Okay? And then you have a right to petition the government specifically. But there's nothing in there that says you have a right to protest. But free speech isn't violence. It's not throwing objects at government vehicles or government property or government agents. It's not making noise all willy-nilly, like blowing whistles or just making noise to make noise, because that can violate, ordinances and local laws on noise violations. It can also be viewed as disorderly conduct if you're disturbing the peace of others in a public space. So again, that's not protected action. That's not free speech. And the First Amendment doesn't protect assembly if in that assembly you are obstructing and interfering with official government operations and government duties. So again, like, that's none of that. If your quote unquote protest is doing those things, it's not a protected action, and that's not a First Amendment right. And I think most importantly, the First Amendment only protects petition of change to the government, not private businesses, not hotels, not restaurants, and certainly not churches. And I think part of this on the citizens side is just being cognizant of the sources that they're taking information from the media content. Because if you're listening to someone like Don Lemon, you will be sorely misinformed.
Crossing the border illegally is not a crime?
No, it's not a criminal act. It's a misdemeanor.
So why are they being sent back and saying that they're breaking the law?
That's the point.
Okay, as somebody that
We don't know if they're breaking the law because they won't tell. There's no due process. Where's the evidence? That's the whole point. And if they are breaking the law, most people will say, okay, then they need to go if they're criminals. But if they're not, why are they being rounded up and sent out? Especially when he promised to deport the criminals. And now he's not doing that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going.
Misdemeanor is not a crime.
Yeah.
So misdemeanor is not
it's
a crime?
not a criminal act. No, if you get charged with a misdemeanor, that's not a criminal
why
act.
charge at all then, if it's not a criminal act?
Because we have different levels of crime. Everything is not the same.
So it is crime.
No,
it's just
we have
different
we
level.
have different levels of. I shouldn't say crime, but it's not a crime. You're not breaking the law. I mean, you are breaking the law, but it's not a criminal act.
So it's breaking the law.
No,
the law, but it's
you're
just
not breaking the law.
The misdemeanor is not breaking the law.
No.
If you're speeding, drinking, get pulled over, DUI.
That's not a criminal act. Well, no, if you're speeding is a misdemeanor.
It's a misdemeanor.
Right.
So it's still breaking the law.
Okay. Well, if you want to qualify that, we're doing semantics. But what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to tell you is everything is not the same. It's all not one thing.
But is it the law?
What is it? The law that what?
Is it a law to come over
there a
legally?
law?
Is there a law?
There are rules that processes that you should follow. Yeah. So you're breaking rules. You're breaking the rules, but you're not necessarily breaking a law.
So what happens when you break the rules?
Then you suffer the consequences. But the consequences should not. Look, no one is saying no one should suffer the consequences. You guys are getting things mixed up.
To note, illegal immigration is a crime, and a crime is any violation of the law. Whether something is a civil or a criminal offense, it depends entirely on the parties involved. So whether it's like the government versus citizen, citizen versus citizen, etc., as well as the level of punishment that's warranted for that violation. So typically if it's like a fine, if your imprisonment is less than a certain amount of days, generally tends to be more of a civil offense. Anything higher than that or whatever is generally criminal. That being said, it is a criminal offense to illegally or to improperly enter the country. It's a criminal offense, but it's a misdemeanor on the first attempt. It's a felony for any attempt thereafter. It's a civil offense if you are in the country, like if your presence in the country is illegal, and this mostly just speaks to visa overstays. So those who came in the right way but didn't leave when they were supposed to, that tends to be just a civil offense, still a crime, still subject to deportation. Don Lemon also thinks that it's freedom of press and freedom of speech to violate a citizen's freedom to practice their own religion.
The MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this assistant attorney general, I don't know, gosh, what's her name? It's something Hammett, Gillen or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protests at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
I mean, we'll see if anything comes out of that situation. I think there's been a lot of issues where you have a lot of local, state, judicial officials who aren't acting appropriately. They're not acting fairly. They're not acting justly. They're letting their biases and their own, like we saw that with that one Kate judge that got charged, but like they're not acting in accordance with being fair and being balanced. But all that being said is that protesting a church inside of the church itself, a church being private property, that is not a protected action by the First Amendment. That's not not constitutionally protected. I think lastly, on the citizen side, it's just being able to use your brain and like just think about it a little bit. I think crazy leftists are just so quick to want to be morally right and morally superior about quote unquote protecting their neighbor that they don't even think about who they're trying to protect.
We're here to arrest a child sex offender. And you guys are out here honking.
Oh, they're not. No, we're pressed. We're not.
That vehicle right there is honking and impeding our investigations while we're trying to arrest a child sex offender. That's who you guys are protecting. Insane.
And you're protecting, again, most of these people, like, I cannot emphasize enough that these immigrants are not undocumented. Like, they're documented in the way that they know that the ICE agents know who's been committing these crimes, who's been raping, victimless or victim women, who's been raping children, who's been murdering, like all of these things. Like, they're not undocumented. They're very closely tracking all of this information, and it's just really annoying to see them like stick out their necks to them for what? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I think on ICE's part, because I didn't really touch on that, there does need to be continued accountability. I do think that all ICE agents should be required to have body cam equipment on them. And I do think that if there is evidence of negligence in their actions or acting with impropriety, if they're acting out of, anger or emotional response, that does need to be addressed. Unfortunately, they are being handed a really tough position where their optics aren't great, but they still have a job that they need to do. And it just has higher scrutiny on them. I am 100% for all the things that ICE is doing, but that also doesn't mean that they get to act all crazy in the name, even though I get it, but also this knowing that they hold a specific position that just requires a lot more scrutiny. So yeah, all that being said is that the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy were preventable on so many levels, but I think what's also really refreshing to see is that a lot of people aren't buying the rhetoric tied to these protests and tied to immigration enforcement, and especially amongst the Black community, amongst Black people. I think there seems to be an awakening of those things that are tied to the Democratic Party and the accusations that some Black people are receiving, especially on TikTok platforms, things of that nature, where people are like, Black people, you need to be out there rioting and protesting, and you need to get out there. And a lot of Black people are like, not my fight. Not my fight. And this is true. This is not the fight of any actual U.S. citizen or any immigrant who is here legally. This is not your fight. Stay out of it. We're not talking about you. Okay? This is very, very, like, there's an actual definition to illegal immigrant. And if you don't fit it, it's not about you.
To my Black brothers and sisters out there that are the ones that are posting all this, oh, we just gonna mind our business. And I saw somebody earlier making t-shirts of like a group of like 6 Black people, Black men and women, sitting on a bench texting on phones while the country is burning up behind them. Let me explain something to you guys. Let me explain something to you. When they get done with the brown people, they'll be coming after you. And if you don't think that's true, you got another motherfucking thing coming. This is bigger than you, okay? Because let me explain another thing to you. You sit back and watch millions of brown people be kidnapped and removed from this country. When they do come after you, there's going to be nobody left to stand up for you. And when they're coming after you, how are you going to feel when people are sitting on the sideline like, oh, we just going to mind our business? Fuck all this other dumb shit. Man, no. It's not the time for that. Power to the people. It's time to come together.
For all the Black Americans saying ICE isn't our problem, you do realize that they're kidnapping Black Americans too, right? And they're just saying, oh, we thought they were African. We thought they were illegal immigrants. And then they will detain you for days, sometimes weeks, so that they can have their way with you in the ICE detention center while they...
Wrong message, even worse messenger. We do not ever need a white person in this country to tell us what is at stake when it comes to the government, police enforcement, and how police enforcement can cause harm to Black Americans. My father sat me down when I was 15 years old because I started to look like a man and taught me how to interact with police. Every Black family teaches their Black sons how to interact with the police. Every Black family talks to their daughters about how to interact with the police.
You know why you're not seeing a lot of Black people out there protesting against ICE? You know why you're seeing predominantly white people only at these events? It's because back in 2020, the Democrats utilized the Black demographic to go out and riot and act a fool. And they said, oh, if you just elect us, we'll give you reparations and we'll force the police to wear body cameras and all these wonderful, amazing things, right? So Black people showed up like we are known to do, and we voted up and down for one side of the aisle. And what did we get for it? Nothing as usual, because many of us never learn. But now, here in 2026, we're seeing individuals who were slavishly devoted to the Democrat Party. Now they're seeing the Democrats over their entire 4 years in office under Joe Biden. They went out of their way to ingratiate themselves to illegal immigrants, and they sometimes prioritized illegal immigrants, even in Black communities, ahead of Black American citizens. And Black people are sitting there saying, wait, you said you were going to give us reparations, you're going to give us X, Y, and Z, and we got nothing for it. So the silver lining is a lot of people are waking up and realizing the Democrats are only courting their next prospective voting bloc. They want to exploit illegal immigrants for an entire generation, much like they've exploited the Black community for the previous several generations. And they're daring you to call them out on that and see it for what it is. So if you're wondering why you only see predominantly white liberals out here acting a fool, rioting and protesting against ICE, it's because ICE is threatening their ability to cater to that next demographic that they desperately want to lock in for an entire generation.
The reason why y'all want Black Americans to be affected by ICE so bad is because y'all are still convinced that we are immigrants, and we are not. We are not. We've been here for over 400 years, and for most of us, our ancestors have been here even before the slave trade. Most of us have American indigenous lineage that we can actually trace, because a lot of our families were reclassified from Indian to Negro, and there's proof that we were reclassified. We are not immigrants. They can't send us back nowhere. Where they gonna send me back? North Carolina? South Carolina? Georgia? Florida? That's the only place that we can go. We're not immigrants. This is not our battle.
But moving on to foreign policy, let's talk about Venezuela. So earlier this year, I want to say it was like January 3rd, Happy New Year for real, from the presidency. The Trump administration and the military executed a lethal, well-performed, well-executed extraction of the president of Venezuela from his home and brought him back to the States, to New York City specifically. And they did all of that without any U.S. deaths, or loss of U.S. equipment, which is like, see, guys, it can be done. It maybe just puts a little bit of more faith back into the military, based on like a recent history where there has been a lot of failures. But Venezuela had been in the news pretty recently, especially in 2025, towards the end, like December, November timeframe, when the administration was executing a lot of different attacks on boats coming from Venezuela that were carrying a lot of drugs, like fentanyl, things of that nature, that are poisoning the American population. And I know there were different media outlets that were like, oh my gosh, the Trump administration, they're targeting these random fishing boats. They're not allowed to do, like, how do you know? How do you know? But it's like, they know, they have the technology, like they know exactly what they're doing. But that being said as well, Maduro is a known public enemy of America for a while, to the point where the Biden administration had placed a $25 million bounty. That's what I was looking for. They placed a $25 million bounty on his head that Trump saved money from, and he did it. He executed it. He got a lot of flack for doing it, but like it needed to be done. And I think now we're just kind of waiting to see what unfolds there, again, with the legal and judicial processes going pretty slowly. Just, again, having to stay tuned for what happens in that regard, along with just the health of the Venezuelan country. I think Mark Rubio has been doing an excellent job as Secretary of State. And I know that he's been a lot higher in the polls for the presidency for 2028. So all that remains to be seen. And then I don't know a lot of information on this, but there have been different reports here and there about the capture of Maduro leading to different uprisings in partnered countries like Cuba and Iran, and their leaderships also having some difficulties maintaining their citizenships and projected potential collapse of those countries. I don't know, maybe we'll have access to Cuba again, we'll see. And I think with Venezuela, there was just a lot of talk about why is the U.S. involved in Venezuela? Why do people care about Venezuela? Why is Trump focusing on Venezuela when we can't even get our own backyard in order? It was easier to capture the president of Venezuela than it is to get freaking Minnesota in line. And so there's been a lot of contention. But I honestly think that this is the best, this is the purpose of the presidency, is foreign policy, and to be able to engage in foreign interest for the interests of America. And everyone talks about you only did it for the oil. And for me, I'm just like, so what if they did? Venezuela is known for having one of the largest oil reserves, or I think petroleum reserves specifically, in the world. The US had previously had access to them, but then when the Communist Party took over, they destroyed the entire system. Like, they couldn't even refine the oil. They couldn't even refine the oils themselves. And it's generally something with communism is like the government can't do well what a private company can, because they're just not working for the same interest. But I digress there. But yeah, so this is meant to be an additional point of oil. You have more oil. You have you lower the cost of energy. You lower the cost of energy. You lower the cost of everything. So this is meant to have big economic impacts. Once that all gets up and running, and if the U.S. can actually gain access to those things. But definitely something that I think is within American interest, even if it's maybe not the priority. But again, all that being said, I think that Trump and the presidency, like, that is their job, is to maintain foreign policy. He's been, he made his appointees, he's delegated the tasks that he's done in the U.S., and he's been providing oversight every now and then as he needs to. But right now, I think that's a good use of his space. The second thing with foreign policy has been just speculation on Greenland, and Trump being more adamant and more persistent about acquiring Greenland as a U.S. territory. I don't know about making it a state or anything of that nature, but it's just noting that not only is it just the minerals that Greenland has, but mostly its position, where it's located in the world, wanting to have more ownership of the land that's within the Western Hemisphere, as well as it being in the Arctic and being a crucial position to defend against foreign nations like Russia or China, and just really having to deal with Denmark. So I didn't do a lot of research here, but like, I don't know what Denmark's claim is to Greenland, but they're like, Greenland's ours, can't take Greenland. But it's like, all that's going on, along with like different conversations in the EU as it pertains to economics. And then on the more mayoral and state level for this month, you have Mamdani and Wilson being sworn in as the new mayors. As Democratic Socialists, allegedly. This is for New York City and Seattle, respectively. And for Mamdani, he is currently being asked to address the budget. He's making a lot of claims right now, saying that Mayor Adams did not leave him with a budget, but Mayor Adams, like, hey, there is $8 billion in the reserve. Like, I am by law required to balance the budget. But Mamdani had a lot of promises that he made in his campaign about things he would allegedly provide for free, knowing that nothing is free, things cost money, people have to get paid for services unless you want slavery. And so now it's saying that there's a deficit in the budget to try to support some of his things that he wants to get passed. And if you don't have enough money, usually the tactic is to tax more instead of spend less. And so that's something that Mamdani and the citizens of New York are going to have to reconcile with. And then in Seattle, with Mayor Wilson, she's been more in the headlines, more so for just being kind of like blatantly dismissive with the with any sort of claims of fraud. So I think it was just like she wouldn't even look into it. She wouldn't even audit. She's just kind of like saying this isn't super happening. I'm not really looking at this right now. And just not being she's just, we have thoughts. We have thoughts, but we're not going to get into it this time around. And then with Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, a very low approval. A really low approval rating for this mayor who has been struggling with his budget, still wanting to again fund illegal immigrants and things of that nature instead of cutting spending and supporting the citizens of his city. And so a lot of citizens have been rebelling. I don't know why they don't make a notion to have him out of office, but he has also been threatening civil war, things of that nature, wanting to arrest some ICE agents or something of those lines. So he's been in the news there. And then on a state level, Virginia just recently welcomed Abigail Spanberger. I know I made my video about her recently, but they are in this kind of FAFO era where Abigail Spanberger ran as a moderate Democrat, but a lot of her first actions as governor lean her a lot towards the liberal / left side of things, including things like making it easier to have voter fraud, where she's like making it illegal to hand count ballots, making it extending the time for mail-in ballots to 3 days past election day, things of that nature. She's also rescinded Governor Youngkin's order that allowed the police officers to cooperate with ICE. And I'd already spoke about the dangers and the problems when you don't allow the police to work with the ICE law enforcement agencies. So again, we'll see what the bigger consequences of those are. I only listed a few of the executive orders, but again, Virginia is I feel like Virginia was mostly swayed by the Northern Virginia folks, so those that are considered the V of the DMV, but we'll see how that goes there. And just in the broader picture of what's going on in the country, tax season has started this year, and especially with Doge, things that were happening earlier, there's been a lot of projection to have an increase in the tax refunds, especially for middle class, lower class families. So there's expected to have up to or at least $1,000 in return, having an average about $3,800 in return, depending on your tax bracket. So just kind of standing by to see. I still need to do my taxes, but just seeing what that actually will look like once tax season ends, along with the Epstein's files still being an issue, still being a point of content. Those files are still being uploaded onto, there is an online database that's ran by the government. It's called the Epstein Library or something along those lines. Those are still being uploaded, and I get that that's something, they're past their deadline for when all of the documents are supposed to be uploaded, but I think it just takes time to go through. It's wasn't it 200,000 or plus papers that need to be digitized and searchable? I don't know, for me, it's not the biggest, it needs to be done for sure, but it's not the biggest priority in my humble opinion. There are supposed to be some Supreme Court decisions being made, especially as it pertains to the definition of what a woman is, and hopefully protecting women being an adult human female as it has been known since time immemorial. But we'll see. I'm not super privy or knowledgeable to that case, and that'll be something that I can review once the decision is being made on that. Right now, I could even tell you the case title for that, but I just know that that's something that's going on, that they've been deliberating or in the hearings for or whatever this month for the Supreme Court. I feel like there's something else. Oh, at least at the time of my recording this, we might be pending a full or partial government shutdown, depending on what Congress does. I think there's been a lot of tension around DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, so just standing by. But I've hit about an hour here. I say an hour now. I feel like I need to separate this into 2 videos or something, or else it's going to be too long. But I guess this is what I get for not making each one of these little points their own video. I guess gotta do it all in one. Whatever. We'll make it work. But that was a very long laundry list of things that have been going on in the country just for this month. And at least these are just the things that I've paid attention to. I'm sure there was something that I missed, and you can feel free to let me know what that looks like in the comments. But just reflecting over everything that has been said overall, and like we just finished the first year of the Trump presidency 2.0. How do you think President Trump is doing? What grade would you assign him? I think me personally, I would give him a B. I feel like he's on track. He's in progress. I think I would like to see a lot more punishment. That sounds kind of bad. I think I would just like to see a lot more punishment for the things that people are doing illegally. But I also just know that the judicial system in general just takes time. You got to be patient, especially if you're wanting them to do it the right way, which I believe the Trump DOJ is trying to do things by the book, the right way. And there's time allotted for deliberation, for collecting resources, evidence, all these things when it comes to pressing charges and all that stuff. So as much as we would like to see someone arrested and then immediately jailed and punished, like that's just not how that works. So I get that. But I think he's trending in the right direction. I do love where my gas prices are. Me personally, I can't speak much for other areas of the economy. I just haven't been paying attention to them. But I think overall, we just at this point where we're at a wait and see what happens. This is the country's 250th anniversary. There's a specific name for it. Give me a second. It's the semi-quincentennial. The semi-quincentennial. That's a lot, but that's the 250th anniversary of our great nation is this year. And so I would suspect, especially as we draw closer to the summer, closer to July 4th, that there's going to be a lot more celebrations or things coming up. I think Trump wants to make it a big deal. And he is seated. I think in one aspect, it's kind of like a good thing that he is the president during this time. It's historic for that reason alone. This is also the year of the midterms, the 2026 midterms. So I suspect there's going to be a lot more things on both sides to kind of rally the voting bases, to get them passionate about voting for their sides. In my humble opinion, I don't think the Democratic Party has anything to offer, anything substantial, nothing worthwhile. But we'll see. But I feel like the way that I see it, and especially with everything that's going on, that there are just a lot of fires. There are a lot of fires burning across this country. There are some that have been uncovered by the Trump administration, some that the Trump administration has started. But the Trump administration is moving. They are active. There's a lot that's going on at once. And it's just such a contrast between this administration and the Biden administration, which felt very geriatric, very slow moving. And maybe with all these fires burning, maybe it's a chance for all of the ill and the awful things to just kind of be burnt down to a crisp, so that from the ashes, our new nation can arise, a phoenix arising on this 250th anniversary. But what the heck do I know? I'm just an amateur. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. I think I had different points where you could comment below. And then also please subscribe. And I only ask you to subscribe if you've made it to the end, because that means that you've listened to my ranting and to my speech the whole way, which means you're someone who's more likely to engage in these conversations, engage in the comment sections, and provide, real good, critical, and thoughtful feedback. For me, it's just kind of annoying when people stop their videos in like the middle or even at the beginning, say, click subscribe, which I get it. I think that's what you need to do for people to do it. But like, I don't know, if you made it to the end, you're my type of person. So all that being said, let me know what you think. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.